Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun
Vanchakalpa Tarubhyashta Kripa Shendaba Evacha Patitanam Pavaneba Vaishnavibha Namo Namaha. Welcome back to the Bhakti Shastri course online, Bhagavad Gita. Unit 1, we're in lesson 8. We'll be looking in the first 12 verses of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita today. Translation and commentary by ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Abhay Charanarvina Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In our previous lesson, we were examining the distinction between Krishna's transcendental birth and the appearance of the conditioned souls, and how Krishna, who appears in his original transcendental body and doesn't change his body, never forgets. Tani aham veda sarvani, remembers everything. Natam veta parantapa, and even the great liberated, highly qualified devotee Arjuna forgets the previous births, which is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the Supreme Lord. And those who understand the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities don't have to take a birth again in this material world. And we're also examining the importance of accepting a spiritual master, as Krishna himself recommends in text number 44 of chapter 4. Let's take a look now at chapter 5. We will cover again some of the areas that we were looking at in previous chapters now from the point of view of the yoga ladder. Prabhupada writes in the purport to second verse of the 3rd chapter. In the previous chapter, that's chapter 2, as a prelude to Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained. Actually, chapter 2 is the title, is the contents of the Gita summarized. You can consider chapter 2 like a contents page for the whole Gita. And through the verses in the 2nd chapter, all of the philosophical concepts of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita are presented in a very succinct form. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. So the more organized, Prabhupada's writing this in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, and the more organized path, which Prabhupada is referring to, we will see in the subsequent chapters, chapter 3 to chapter 6, where the concepts which were just touched upon in the 2nd chapter, karma kanda, karma yoga, buddhi yoga, jnana, etc., unsystematically presented. They're presented in a very systematic way, chapter by chapter, from the subsequent chapter, throughout the subsequent chapters up to chapter 6. We can see that the 3rd chapter is entitled Karma Yoga. Karma Kanda is also discussed in chapter 3, so Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga. Chapter 4, the chapter is entitled Jnana Yoga. And chapter 5, Karma Sannyas Yoga, which inherently is discussing the activities of the liberated Jnani and how he deals with this world, is discussed in that chapter. And then in chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, the Astanga Yoga system. So looking at the overview of the chapters as they appear chronologically, we can see a yoga ladder is established here from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga to Dhyana Yoga. And we will, over the next couple of lessons, explain this yoga ladder in more detail according to the analyses and perceptions that Srila Prabhupada imparts in his writings. As we mentioned, verses 10 to 16 of the 3rd chapter are dealing with Krishna's describing how by performing the karma kanda processes, one gradually gets purified and comes to the higher rung of karma yoga. Let's take a look at some of these verses in more detail. In text number 10, Krishna is explaining, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu and blessed them by saying, be thou happy by this yajna. And this means the karma kanda division of the Vedas, where different demigods are worshipped in order to ensure, as Prabhupada is translating, its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. In the bottom of the page and halfway through the purport, Prabhupada is explaining that by the yagya system, karma kanda, worshipping demigods, one can live very comfortably, without anxiety. After finishing the present material body, he can enter the kingdom of God. By performance of the yagya, the conditioned souls gradually become Krishna conscious. How is that? Because if one is performing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, then actually he's not incurring any sins. For all of the activities that we are performing in this world, there is karmic reaction, there is sinful reaction. We're eating, we're working, everything that we're doing. And if that is done in an irregulated way, without any following guidance of the Shastra, then incurring the sins, we can actually lose our facility of the human form of life. We may be degraded as a result of accumulated sins and be lost somewhere in the cycle of birth and death, 8,400,000 species of life. So therefore, the Vedic literature gives prescriptions, guidelines whereby we can live in this world, we can enjoy in this world in such a way that there will be no sin. So simply by performing those Vedic rituals of worshipping the demigods and the different yagya systems, the sacrifices, and becoming sinless, then gradually one becomes purified because he's not performing sin. The demigods in text 11, the demigods being pleased by the sacrifices will please you, and cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. In the purport, Prabhupada is explaining, by performance of yagya, one's eatables become sanctified, and by eating sanctified foodstuff, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified. And when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. In text number 12, Krishna is explaining that the demigods, being satisfied by the yagya, will supply necessities to you. In the purport, Prabhupada is explaining, so many necessities are required, even for manufacturing enterprises. Raw materials like metal, sulfur, mercury, manganese, and so many essentials, which are supplied by the agents of the Lord with the purpose that we should make proper use of them to keep ourselves fit and healthy for the purpose of self-realization. Now, a person who is enjoying these things, the rain, the water, drinking, the sun, the vegetables, the air, enjoying these things without paying the tax to the government, Jo Bhunkte Shtena Evasaha. They're a thief, and there's sinful reactions for that. Therefore, text 16 explains that Agaya Indriya Ramo. If your life is simply Indriya Ramo, simply based around enjoying your senses, that type of a life is Agayur. Ayur is duration of life, Agar is sin. It's sinful life. Moga Parta Sajiviti. And in this way, one wastes his life. What the common materialists would just say, having a good life and just enjoying your life, it's called just enjoying my life, nothing wrong with that. Well, actually, Krishna doesn't agree. He says just enjoying your life is a life of sin, and moga parta sajivati. A person lives in vain. Moga, a useless life, wasted life. So actually we have to perform these Vedic ritualistic ceremonies in order to appease the demigods, in order to pay the taxes for all of the facilities that are being provided. And of course, as Prabhupada's mentioning regularly throughout these purports, that in the Kali Yuga, the actual method of performing yagya is the Sankirtan yagya. In the age of Kali, the Sankirtan yagya, the chanting of the names of God, is recommended, as recommended in the Vedic literatures, and this transcendental system was introduced by Lord Chaitanya for the deliverance of all men in the age. So by performing Sankirtan, then automatically all of the demigods are satisfied, and we're paying the dues that we require for all of the facilities that they're providing. Even those who are not fortunate to have been able to be inundated in the flood of love of Godhead, which is being precipitated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement spreading all over the world, even by performing the traditional sacrificial processes for the various demigods, will purify one. In text 12, Krishna is explaining that, in text 13, actually, Krishna is explaining Jagyashishta Ashano Shanto Muchante Salvikilabisai. That by taking the remnants of the yagya, one is purified, even of previous sins. And Prabhupada's commenting that in the purport to text 14, in regarding eating prasadam, Krishna Prasadam. By such action, not only are the past sinful activities in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. The importance of taking prasadam for the devotees. But in general, according to the yagya system, the remnants of the sacrifice would also be offered and would be honored, and in that way gradually purified. A little story about this that I can share with you, that in the Western, I find it quite amusing, in the Western countries, at the December month, devotees intensely increase the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books. We used to call that the Christmas marathon. Now it's called Prabhupada Marathon in December, Prabhupada Marathon. And in the Western countries, because at that time the materialists are shopping, and because of what they call the Christmas spirit. So the devotees sometimes would also get the Santa Claus suit and distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, and yo-ho-ho and take a book. So one devotee in the Santa Claus suit, he was distributing in the hotel, in a bar, and he distributed a Bhagavad Gita, and then after the distribution he was sitting in the car park in the van, and as devotees often do, they count the Lakshmi and get an idea of how the Sankirtan's going. So he's sitting in the passenger seat of the van waiting for the other devotee. He'd taken off his Santa beard. He's sitting there, he's counting the money. And came to the window of the van was one customer who had bought the Bhagavad Gita in the bar, and then he was leaving the bar, and he looked over and he saw the devotee sitting there, and then he was upset. He came to the car, he had a gun, he said, "You're not Santa. You're not Santa." He was a little upset by that. "Here, I want my money back." And he had a gun. And the devotee was there. And the devotee said, no, we're Santa. He said, "You're not Santa. Look in the book that I gave you." And he said, the devotee said, "Look in the book, in chapter 3, text 14. And you can just read the first line in the commentary." And so that gentleman, he had his Bhagavad Gita, he opened it up at chapter 3, and he found text number 13, and he read the first line of the purport. "The devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called Shantas, because they are always in love with the Lord, as described in the Bhagavad Gita." So reading that, the customer became satisfied, and then he went off with his Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada ki. Prabhupada transcendental book distribution ki. So Krishna is concluding in text number 15 that Tasmat sarvagatam brahma nitam jagya pratishtitam. In the jagya system, where the demigods are worshipped according to the Vedic rituals, nitam jagya pratishtitam sarvagatam brahma, that the all-pervading transcendence is inherently manifest within the yagya system. So by following that system of worshipping the demigods, you are associating with the Lord indirectly because you're following the standard Vedic system. And in that way, as a result of your association with the Lord, by agreeing to and aligning oneself with His standard system for functioning in this material world, then one gradually is coming closer and closer to God. Prabhupada's commenting, "Evam pravratitam chakram." This is a cycle. We are living on food grains, vegetables. The scientific teachings of Bhagavad Gita, text 14, is explaining how grains are such an important verse. We'll read that. Anad bhavanti bhutani parajanyad anashambhavaha. All living entities require food grains, and the purport Prabhupada's explaining even the meat eaters, they may not think that they require food grains, but they're eating the animals who eat grains. So actually the anna, the grains, are the essential foodstuff for maintaining life. And parajanyad anasambhava, the grains are produced by rain. Without rain, there's no growth. And the rains, jagyad bhavati parajanya, is performance of the yagya system. Traditionally was the worship of the various demigods, and similarly following all of the regulations of the varnashram system. And that way the demigods were satisfied, and there was plenty of rain, and in that way there was profuse vegetation and grains growing. It's very scientific. Bhagavad Gita is very scientific. How we can deal with these requirements of humanity. Krishna is giving us the process. And even more specifically, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, making it even more convenient for humanity at large to perform Sankirtan. Demigods like Indra, Chandra and Varuna are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods so that they may be pleased to supply air, light and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped. Yatarthala mula nishaichanena tripyanti tatskanda bujopashakaha pranoparachcha yatindriyanam tataiva saraham achute ja. Narad Muni is explaining in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, just by watering the root of a tree, yatarthala mula nishaichanena tripyanti tatskanda bujopashaka. Tatskanda buja upashaka. By watering the root, the trunk, the branches, the twigs are all automatically nourished. So by worshipping Krishna, by chanting Hare Krishna, the demigods automatically become satisfied, and Prabhupada's concluding that the Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices. Therefore, one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yagya, specifically the Sankirtan Yagya, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply. So in this way, we have been examining how, by analysis of Krishna's statements and Prabhupada's purports in 3rd chapter verses 10 to 16, how by performing the karmakanda processes and worshipping the demigods and other rituals and other regulations of the karmakanda system, one gradually progresses, becomes purified, and comes to the next level, which will be karma yoga, which we will discuss in more detail shortly. In our study of chapter 4, we were explaining how verses 16 to 24 of the 4th chapter describe the behavior or the activity of the karma yogi, the advanced karma yogi or self-realized jnani, and describing how he's acting in such a way but not occurring any reactions for his actions. Similarly, the same description is given in verses 8 to 11 of chapter 5. And let's take a look at those in some detail now. Text 8 of chapter 5, Krishna is explaining that a person in the divine consciousness, that's a yukta manyata tattvavit, that's a self-realized soul. In the Sanskrit, Krishna is mentioning there a tattvavit, a self-realized soul. A yukta, who's completely realized his nature beyond the body. How does he deal with this world? Although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching and smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, he always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. This is describing a realization of an impersonalist and how he's realized his eternal nature while still in this material body. The verse is mentioning naiva kinchit karomiti. A literal translation of that, you could say, is that naiva kinchit, not even anything, karomi, he's doing. And naiva kinchit karomiti, that he's not doing anything. He's not doing anything to coin, you could say, a blunt translation. Naiva kinchit, not at any time doing anything. Of course, Krishna is explaining here that he's realizing that he's not the body. However, this is misunderstood by common people, that spiritual life means a life of laziness, where one doesn't do anything at all. Let's take a look at some of these verses from the 4th chapter that we referred to. In text number 20 of chapter 4, the translation. Abandoning all attachment to the result of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Nitta tripta nirashayaha. Nirashayaha means without, Prabhupada translates, ever satisfied and independent. Nirashayaha. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Shariram kevalam karma. That's very interesting. Acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. Yadricha labashan tushta. satisfied with whatever comes on its own accord. Sharidam kevalam karma. This is, you could say, the usual behavior of the impersonalists. Simply, they will deal with this world to the minimum extent possible. One time I was taking yoga classes in Rishikesh, and the instructor, he called himself Swami actually, and it was interesting because I was in the class. There's about 20 students. Most of them were ladies, 2 or 3 men. So I would ask a question, and the Swami would answer like this. Yeah, you do like this. You suck it in. And then when the ladies would ask the question, then he would give very elaborate answers, and he was very excited and keen to show them mercy. So anyway, I asked him one day. I said, Swami Ji, if Jagan Mithya, if it's all unreal, then why we take the trouble of running the school and coming here and having administration and organize? It's all false, and why do it? And if you and I are one, then why do I need you at all? Why do we need a teacher at all if everything's one? And his response was, well, yes, it's all false, but you've got to do something to make a living. You've got to do something to make a living. So actually, you can't, the impersonalistic philosophy, you can't really live by it. Because if everything is false and it's all illusion, then what's the point? There's no point in carrying on in an illusory way. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was passing through Varanasi, he was criticized by the impersonalist philosophers. As Krishna is mentioning here, Shariram kevalam karma. Just for the bare necessities for keeping your body alive, that you can take and not more. And they were criticizing Mahaprabhu. Oh, you Vaishnavas, you're crying, you're dancing, you're singing, you're laughing, you're having feasts. Vedanta pat dhyana shannashira dharma. Tada charikene bhavukena karma. The duties of the sannyasi are Vedanta part, means reading the Vedanta, and dhyan, meditation. And eating very frugally, because after all, it's all illusion. And enjoyment of the tongue is illusion. Therefore, the impersonalistic approach is very dry. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was delivered by Mahaprabhu, he said that I was trying to extract juice from the dry oil cake, like hard, rock hard. And you're trying to get some nectar from it. The impersonalist, there's no rasa, there's no nectar. There's truth, Atma Tattva, we're not the body, but there's no relationship, there's no emotion. There is no love. Therefore, when the common people see the activities of the Vaishnavas, oftentimes they're bewildered. When they see the Vaishnavas very much determined to, Krishna mentions in text 22, Yadricha labha. With whatever comes on its own accord, Yadricha labha. Well, we're satisfied with that, and we don't endeavor for any more. And the common people, they don't understand the behavior of the ISKCON devotees, how we may be inducing people to contribute to projects. And it appears that we're not really satisfied with what has come on its own accord, and we want more and more. When devotees are distributing books, oftentimes we hear the aphorism that Prabhupada, distribute more and double it. It appears to be contradictory that we should be satisfied with what I went out on book distribution, I distributed 1-2 magazines, that's enough. That's not the attitude we want to distribute more, we're endeavoring more. And the common people, due to misunderstanding these concepts in Bhagavad Gita, they are unable to understand the enthusiasm, the effort with which the devotees endeavor to increase their service to Krishna. It seems like a material thing. Of course, we understand that these activities are transcendental. And let's have a look at Prabhupada's explanation of these verses and verses in the 5th chapter. And it's amazing when we see Prabhupada's explanation of these concepts according to the Vaishnava Siddhanta. So back in the 5th chapter, where we were reading how the impersonalist appears not to do anything at all. In his commentary on this, in lecturing in 1966 in New York, Prabhupada's commenting, Naiva kinchit karomiti. A Krishna conscious person never thinks that I am doing something. Even if you ask him, are you going to such and such a place? He'll say, I do not know when I shall go, but when Krishna will ask me or allow me to go, I shall go. So the impersonalist, he's thinking, I'm not going. Prabhupada's explaining the devotee, he's thinking, when Krishna allows me to go, I will go. The impersonalist is thinking, I'm not this body, it's all illusion, I'm not going. The devotee is thinking, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he's looking after me, when he allows, I will go. The devotee's consciousness is completely transcendental. I am saying this from my practical experience, from my Guru Maharaj. He would never say, I am going. I am doing. No. If Krishna desires, then I shall do it. If Krishna desires, then I shall go. In essence, the understanding is the same, that we're not these material bodies, but the perception of the devotee is so sweet. It's so sublime. It is so attractive that seeing Krishna at every moment and feeling dependent on Krishna is actually the nature of the devotee. Just like text number 20. Chaktvakama palashangam nittatripta nirashayaha. Nirashayaha, without any shelter. Because that's meaning that without any material shelter. Without any, not in dependence. But it's not mentioning there's a spiritual shelter. It's just without, and Krishna saying in this case, the impersonalists are without any shelter, that's without any material shelter. But the devotee never considers himself to be nirashayaha, without any shelter. The devotee always considers himself to be completely dependent upon the shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord and his representatives. Text 24. We were, many years ago when I was in Melbourne, Australia, we were catering for the temple. We had all of the facilities in the temple, the cooking equipment, and the devotees would do catering programs that people would ring the temple and ask for a catering service, and devotees would go and cater different events, and it was an effective method of raising funds for the preaching. One time we were invited by the Sai Baba organization for their annual convention. It was out in a remote resort in the hills in Victoria. And they invited the devotees to cater for the whole program for the weekend. And it was fun. We were there. We had about 20 or 30 devotees. We had a whole camp set up, our whole kitchen. We put up a tent. And huge facilities there, the cookers, the huge pots. There was probably 150 participants in their convention, and we were cooking 3 times a day. Huge feasts, each meal. We were in the kitchen the whole time. And many of the guests, the participants, commented when they were having their sharing at the end of the program, how the prasadam was just completely, by the end of the 3 days, their devotional sentiments had awakened so much. So I remember that of course we were cooking and offering everything in our temple and little temple. And in the kitchen we were having kirtans the whole time, and oftentimes the members would come in and look at the kitchen, and it looked like we were having a lot better time in the kitchen than they were having in their convention. So I remember that, of course, we were offering everything we cooked, we were offering it, and then we'd take it and distribute. And I remember that before eating, they had a system actually, what they considered to transcendentalize the food so there'd be no karma for eating it. They would do a little meditation before the food, basically meditating that the food and me and everything is one, and in that way I'm eating it because of oneness, and try to remain in the spiritual conception, and in that way not get affected by illusion. And they would chant this verse actually. Brahmapanam Brahmahavi Brahmagno Brahmanam Hutam Brahmaiva Tenagantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina. That everything is one. The Brahmagno, the fire, the Brahmana Hutam, the priest who's offering, the Brahmapanam, that which is offered, the butter, etc., etc. The butter, the spiritual, the fire, they're all one. It's all one. So by chanting this verse, looking at the meal, they're remembering that it's all one, and on the strength of their gyan, they're able to become aloof from the karmic reactions. Because this is not very easy. In text number 23 of chapter 4, Krishna is explaining Gata Sangha Shamukta Shagyana Bhashtita Chetashaha. As we were describing the impersonalists there, that just by the strength of their Gyan. That's called Jnana Bhashtita, Cheta. Being situated in Gyan. Just somehow or other sustaining that realization that it's all one, it's all spiritual energy, I'm not the body. That's called Jnana Bhashtita Chetasaha. Jagyaya Charataha Karma Shamaguram Pravaliyate. Then for all of the Jagyaya Charata Karma, that means that the work that that person does, because of the strength of their Gyan, that work becomes a yagya. So this is different from this, a higher platform. The platform of Jnana is a higher platform. In the Karma Kanda platform, through the actual ritualistic ceremonies, one performed the yagya. But here, just by Jnana Bhashtita, just by being situated in full knowledge, and never forgetting that, Jnana Bhashtita Chetasaha, Jagyaya Charataha Karma, then whatever one does is a yagya, Shamagram Pravaliyate, and there is no reaction to the work. But this is a very difficult platform to sustain. As Krishna mentions at the conclusion of the chapter in text 37, Gyan Agni, by the fire of Gyan. What is the potency? In Krishna consciousness is by the association of Krishna and the purificatory effect of Krishna's name and associating with Krishna's name that we purify ourselves of all contamination. Here, Krishna is explaining Gyan Agni is by the heat, by the fire, which is produced from their realization that they're not the body. Gyan Agni Sarva Karmani Bhashma Sat Kurute Tata. The blazing fire, as a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, so Arjuna, the fire of knowledge burns to ashes reactions of material activities. So on the basis of this principle, the impersonalists would sit in front of the plate and just by the strength of their knowledge, based on that, their strength of Gyan Agni, the strength of their knowledge, and remembering the transcendental nature of who they are, the spirit soul, that potency, it exhumes, it ignites and burns up all sinful reactions. So that is a very difficult platform to sustain. One has to be extremely realized in Gyan to be able to be constantly remembering his eternal nature. And therefore, the impersonalistic approach is that unnecessary effort to maintain the body or to develop things in the material world is of no use because it's all temporary. And in that way, the common materialist, misunderstanding these concepts, are unable to appreciate the enthusiasm with which the devotees are putting effort into spreading the Sankirtan movement and increasing the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It appears contradictory to these teachings, where one should be very, very simple and not act in any way which is beyond the immediate requirements. So in Prabhupada's purports to these verses, he writes in such a sublime way, which you could say is, it should be taken as a mission statement for all the political leaders of all nations, how to inspire the young generation and guide them on the path of spiritual and material progress. Prabhupada's vision is so sublime. In commenting on these verses, Prabhupada explains, the absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. Prabhupada's statements here are in themselves a shastra that can become the essential vision statements for the whole of humanity. It's such a powerful statement and so clear. Prabhupada's vision is so deep. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the Absolute regains its spiritual quality. In that one sentence, Prabhupada explains the underlying principle which explains all of the activities of the Krishna consciousness movement. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the Absolute Truth. In this case, the cause of the Absolute Truth is the mission of fulfilling Mahaprabhu's prediction, Pritividyacha Joto Nagaradi Gram. Joto, that many Naga village and Nagaradi Gram, village and city. Jota Nagaradi Gram, that many. Savatra Procha Hoibe Mornam. It will be, it will happen. Therefore, the devotees, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they want to serve that prediction. They want to make it happen. And that takes effort. And everything that we're doing in pursuance of that effort, or maintaining the vehicles, collecting the funds, organizing the strategies, providing the facilities where the missionaries will live, providing training, all of the interaction with the material energy involved in organizing that mission, as Prabhupada mentions, it regains its spiritual quality. So it's a complete opposite. Rather than a misunderstanding these verses and thinking that spiritual life means you do less, and you just become a lazy loafer type fellow sitting around in the temple and not getting entangled in anything. And as a result of this perception, the practical people have no appreciation of the spiritual life. They think it's for useless fellows that were unable to be productive in the material world, to send them off to the temple, and then they can ring the bells and chant. And practically speaking, the spiritual life has no potency, has no value. It's just a place where you send the incompetent misfits. And therefore people, there's no respect, or there's little respect for the spiritualist and those who are seriously advancing in the spiritual path. But Prabhupada's understanding and explanation here is complete opposite. And this way we can synthesize our experience in this material world, that we can act in such a way that we can involve and incorporate and utilize all of our talents and inspirations to increase and expand the Sankirtan movement, and in that way everything is spiritualized around us. And the more enthusiastic, the more we expand, the more spiritualized the environment becomes. This is a brilliant philosophy which can actually save the world and inspire every person to take the spiritual life in a very practical and convenient way. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into the Supreme, or the Brahman. As Prabhupada continues, the more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness, or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. That's Prabhupada's translation and understanding of that verse. Not that simply, I'm God, you're God, let's eat and enjoy and don't worry about it. Prabhupada's depth of understanding of Bhagavad Gita is absolutely incredible. Srila Prabhupada ki. In text 2 of the 5th chapter, which we mentioned in a previous lesson regarding karma sannyas and karma yoga, Krishna mentions tayas tu karma sannyasat, karma yoga vishishyate, that of the two, giving up work, the impersonal approach, and karma yoga, in this case, what Krishna is recommending for Arjuna, and also applicable for bhakti yoga, Krishna recommends that karma yoga is superior. And in the purport, Prabhupada's explaining, Gyan, or knowledge that one is not the material body but spirit soul, is not sufficient for liberation. One has to act in the status of spirit soul. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. We'll be examining in the next lesson how the Gyan of the Bhakta is actually deeper and more advanced than the Gyan of the Jnani, because he is more progressed and he's acting in the platform of Gyan rather than simply denying the material energy. As Prabhupada mentions, activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. In other words, by performing bhakti, devotional activities, one's Gyan actually deepens more and more. One should understand that factually nothing belongs to anyone. Then where is the question of renunciation? One who knows that everything is Krishna's property is always situated in renunciation. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in the service of Krishna. This perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of the conditioned soul. Action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the result of fruitive action, so that one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails the risk of falling. In this lesson, we were analyzing the progression of chapters 3 to 6 and how this reflects the prospective rungs of the yoga ladder, which we will elaborate on in subsequent lessons. And we were discussing how by performing the Vedic ritualistic yagyas, one gradually can be elevated from the platform of karmic kanda to the platform of jnana. And we were also discussing the inappropriate understanding of verses in the 4th and 5th chapter, where the impersonalists are rejecting the material energy, compared to Prabhupada's description of the Vaishnava approach wherein the material energy is incorporated in the service of the Lord, and in that way the whole of the environment becomes spiritualized, and the sublime teachings of Krishna consciousness as imparted to us by our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada to inspire the whole world to take the spiritual life in a very practical and convenient way. In our next lesson, we'll be carrying on with the analysis of the Yoga Ladder, and we'll be looking at the beginning of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.